Welcome to a brand new show. I am Uziel Naparstek.
Hello, my name is David, and I'm from the channel Yiddishkeit. We talk about Jewish history, culture, and art. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
All right, and we are starting a new show called Frumography, where we just have a discussion about Jewish entertainment, Jewish culture, Jewish pop culture, music, movies, just history, culture, anything that has to do with the idea of Jewish entertainment. And it's pretty exciting because we are here with two interesting perspectives, but we both love, at the end of the day, just good quality Jewish content, whether in all mediums and all types of realms of entertainment. And also, it's also interesting because we come from very different backgrounds. So tell us about your background for my audience that don't know, and then I'll tell your audience that might be joining along with my background a little bit.
Sure. So I grew up in what I call the yeshivish slash Haimish community. I went to big yeshivas, Mir Yeshiva, and so on. So that's kind of my perspective. My parents are Soviet immigrants who, grew up atheist because of the Soviet Union, but then became Bali Tshuva, which means they joined Orthodoxy as adults, and then I was born into it. And so that kind of gave me interesting perspective because as a child, the two types of films that I would consume would be either Orthodox, like we're going to discuss today, or Soviet. And then as I got older, I watched more American stuff. And then about 2 years ago, on the channel, I started a series called Yiddish Kino Club, which is where we look at movies that depict Jewishness. A lot of them that I've been focusing on over the past 2 years have been dealing with the theme either of tradition versus modernity, where famous example, let's say Fiddler on the Roof, where each of his daughters want to renegotiate that tradition of the shtetl and become increasingly modern. And each time Tevye rather, is resisting it, and then by the end he kind of breaks and snaps. So those are kind of one topic cover. Recently, I've been covering more of just stories of immigrants and coming into America, adapting to America, and that's been kind of in honor of July 4th. I felt like switching more to that topic, and I have a few more of those type of films coming up. But that's really where I'm entering this conversation. But I think one more piece to add is that the idea of Orthodox films or comma Orthodox representation in films, which are really two separate topics, but to
Yeah.
me those are not nearly as talked about as I would like them to be. And this conversation is a step in changing that, in talking more about the films that we saw growing up, discussing what was great about them, what may have been problematic about them, just pointing out what that says about the Orthodox community and how what they're trying to show to the children. Yeah, and all a bunch of interesting topics. And also on the flip side of how people who are not insiders, people who are outsiders, see Orthodox people as sometimes kind of like a not even a real person, like a puppet, where the payas are attached to the hat, and things like that.
Yeah.
So trying to counter narrative that, like, why do people see that, and what can we do better in film to actually make Orthodox people real people in these stories? So that's a brief version of my perspective.
Yeah. And for anyone that's going to join or is joining from your side of the aisle of your audience, my background is basically I was grew
Yeah.
up born and grew up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I lived in I have a pretty big family, but by the time my older siblings went to yeshiva or seminary or high school out of town, because there's not really a religious school or place for my siblings to go when they get of age to actually go seriously in their education. And so eventually we always had videos in my house, starting with the VHSs with my older siblings and then moving on to DVDs when I came around. And eventually watching the films became more than entertainment than actually consuming and enjoying the entertainment. For example, growing up, I always stayed around for the credits, or I always watched the behind the scenes while my siblings were bored out of their minds. Like, why are we watching those parts? But as much as I would like to admit that maybe I was just watching because I was interested, but I think there was something inside of me when I was younger that loved the concept of stories, and whether it was taken seriously in drama or not necessarily, but just as fascinating in comedy. And then eventually understanding more just by picking up things that normal people wouldn't see in Jewish films. And then when I was around yeshiva time, there was a lot of in me that was like, okay, I love to the concept of stories and videos and entertainment. What can I do about it? And then when I moved on to from after yeshiva, I got to the concept of why can't I just research, like talk to the people that made it, which then how can I do that as a fan, which is what led to me doing podcasts like the Pneumius podcast, which I talk to all these people who are actors, producers, directors, not just in the American from religious community, but also in the Israeli side of it, because a lot of the most of the entertainment that we got in America was Israeli dubbed into English, and so and thank God I know Hebrew from my parents, so therefore it was easier for me to get connected. And 3 years later, I felt so lucky to talk to all these people, not necessarily just Jewish, but also non-Jewish producers and directors, and then getting in, and then seeing it in person, like the sets and getting into the things. And then now we are here with just me loving to talk about it all the time. And so that's my background, and my perspective is that as a fan growing up with these videos, I am a full believer that it's not enough to entertain, because just to entertain at the cost of quality does lead to satire and fatigue. And as a fan wanting to see the industry thrive, not just in production and scale, but mainly in quality. And I'm sure we'll get into more about that topic, where you'll find that my most favorite things I love that other people love, that we could agree what I love that they like, an average normal person in the From audience, the religious audience. But I kind of have this feeling that I enjoy it more than just because they have nostalgia in their childhood, or because it was glamorous in their eyes when they were kids, or just the fact that they enjoy watching it now, just because it's fun and entertaining. And for me, it's more that, because a lot of times there are deeper concepts in the writing, in the acting, and the producing side of it. And that's what I love to talk about firmly, about how much we could advance the quality of the entertainment.
Yeah, would you be able to give some examples of that? Like, what are some examples from films you saw that were for the Orthodox world that you think are like really good quality? I'm curious to hear
Uh,
like what you're referring to.
So there's different aspects. I think more people kind of turn into the good quality of production more than writing. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
when there's more money and resources put on screen in the production side, and quality and resolution, or just as simple as like quality resolution, like HD 4K. You know what I mean? Kind of draws
Sure,
more
yeah.
people. But for me, there it is again. Like I said, is more into the writing. An example. There's actually a film right now that I'm trying to start this new series of analysis in Jewish videos, where I go deep, 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 and with things. And there's this film made about almost 20 years ago. It's called Room 32. I don't know if you heard it, but
Okay.
yeah,
Not
but
not
but
really
I'm I,
a distant now.
yeah.
What
So
is it
so
about?
the
What speaks to it?
so it's a film about characters in a hotel. It's about like a people that go into a hotel, and they end up finding themselves in a very bad situation. At first, it's like glamorous. They're enjoying themselves, and they're doing a meeting for business. That's why they're mainly at the hotel. And then eventually, they get caught into a plot of like the hotel owners and people at the hotel trying to use their because they're rich and because they're trying to steal their money. It's kind of more sophisticated. I'm just saying it as a brief, but that's an
Yeah.
example of characters written very well in a few aspects. One is the arc of a character from A to Z in a film, and then distinct characters, because a lot of times in Jewish entertainment, characters find themselves being the same, right? Like all the good guys are the same good guys, and all the bad guys are the same bad guys. But what's really cool is that every character has its distinct personality that's brought into the screen, and not only that, but the personality actually determines their actions and actually makes it sense of why they do what they do. And then also there's a lot of left out in their background where the audience could interpretate what their background is that led to where you see them at the beginning and then leads them to the end. I'm not going to go into so deep because I would like to talk about films that could relate to you because you know it, but that's just an example of like one where it's like not necessarily the best production because it's very cheap to go to one hotel, one place, and film everything there and for like a few days and you're done, and just resources and financials are easy. But what the strength of it is the quality of story, writing, and characters, and the acting of each of those actors that played their parts was so distinct.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. I think what I'm taking from what you're saying is that there's really kind of two reasons to watch something like this. For me, it's more, I'll just be honest, it's more of nostalgia because I look at all the
Yeah.
things I watched as a kid. And honestly, you forget, like, like, I'll speak for myself. I have like a distant impression of certain things. And then over the past, I don't know, 2, 3 years, having rewatched little things here and there, like, recently I rewatched a couple with my siblings, and I remember being like, "Wow!" Like I remember the impression, but I missed so much of these details. Like I didn't remember it. So I think that's like one end of it, and then the other side, what you're saying is, well, what about making something that's good that can actually give a good message? Because this thing is generally aimed at children. How can we instill a good message using a medium that children enjoy watching? It's more fun than books. And then now I don't know if CDs or story tapes are still in vogue. They may have become obsolete. So like videos is really the next big thing. So how do you make sure you instill that idea? That's definitely an interesting point, and I find that interesting in retrospect. That to me it doesn't seem as imminent because for a few reasons. One, I feel like the medium is evolving. I feel like also a lot of Jewish entertainment now, maybe not for children necessarily, is online where there's podcasts, other things like that. So channels that post videos, etc. So yeah, it's just interesting to kind of zoom out and look at the different reasons for being interested in this topic. But yeah, I'll just zoom in for 1 second on an experience I think we can unpack, which is you mentioned how for you a lot of these Jewish films were seen at home, for a lack of entertainment because let's say in my world, the internet was something that wasn't not there, but was forbidden. And so it took longer for it to kind
Yeah.
of take
Yeah.
hold. And so we didn't really have internet in the house until I was around 10 years old. And even that process, till it became normalized with YouTube and just watching on a regular basis, also took a very long time. But my two main initial encounters with, let's call it Orthodox filmography, was first I had these neighbors of mine who were also in a similar position, grew up in the same yeshivish community, and we would basically watch like the films that we had lying around. And around that point, this organization known as URA started to produce these discs
Yeah.
known as the
Yep.
Shmorg. And Shmorg is like a Yiddish word for like a buffet, where it's like little bits of different films, different short films, music videos. They would reuse a lot of stuff or make original content. And they did that for about a decade in order to promote their auction. And then, but on our side, it was, for me, it was like my first introduction to this world. Trying to think of like specific things. There was definitely this video by this Jewish singer named Lipa Schmelzer, which was kind of popular. And he made a version of it for this video disc that was sent out to like thousands of Jewish families.
You're talking
where
about the very first one, by the way. The very first one,
Yeah.
which was him going around the world.
Yeah, that's right. And he sings like the chorus of his song in like a dozen languages. But I remember as a kid, like I saw that probably hundreds of times. Memorized like every micro gesture that he did, every like fluctuation in his voice. It was like I didn't really have much variety, so it was just the same.
Yeah.
So that was kind of introduction one, and then shortly thereafter, I also was introduced in camp when we go on trips. We would go on a coach bus once a month, and to like a farther trip, and the coach buses had a disc player, so each screen can play a DVD for the whole bus, and that's where we would see not so much. I know people are expecting me to say Agent MS, but
Yeah.
not so much Agent MS, but more the other films from Israel that you mentioned earlier, the Grovice films, and we saw a lot of them. I tried to put together a list in my head.
Yeah,
I came up
yeah.
with like five, but I'm sure there's way more that we saw there. So that was my first introduction.
Do you have a favorite as a kid, and then do you have a favorite rewatching it now, if you did any, or did you relook at them any?
Yeah, so specifically with Grovice, I did rewatch a couple recently. There was one called Brothers Forever, which
Yeah.
was briefly was basically the story of this man from Israel going back to I think Venice or somewhere in Italy in order to settle the estate of his family that left there before the war, only to discover that the estate is being run by his long lost brother, who's a priest, and they have to basically reconcile one's Jewish, one is Christian, and
Yeah.
how do they figure that out? So yeah, I remember that was it was a film that I enjoyed as a kid. Um, Also, by the time you see it, because it repeats like every summer, and you see these. Eventually, it also made it onto the Schmort, which is how I rewatched it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, by seeing it dozens of times, by the end, they're like starting to get bored. The way to stay entertained is to make fun of everything. But it was definitely enjoyable. I think the nostalgia though was like, wow. Like I remember myself being a 10-year-old on a coach bus late night in New Jersey somewhere. So that was kind of like I said, it's the nostalgia of it. Another one I recently rewatched from Girl Vice that was this is just a classic, is called The Challenge, where
Yeah, so
this
that wasn't Grovice. That was made
Mhm.
by a guy named Avi Greenberg, who was so you are you familiar with the name Green Tech?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So Green Tech is a distributor for all these films in Israel when they were
Right.
coming out, and Avi Greenberg, who made the film, was very into was from the company Green Tech, and he made that film. But anyway, yeah, go on from what you're saying.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that nuance, but it was very interesting idea. Again, like it's just so interesting to return to it, a decade plus later with different perspective. But
Yeah,
the brief version of the story is that this guy who's a secular Jew in Israel, he makes a bet with his friends, or they challenge him, hence the title, where he's going to basically pretend to be a yeshiva boche, an Orthodox student, for a week, and if he gets away with it, then he wins the challenge. And then again, the whole film is just showcasing how you know all the little idiosyncrasies of the yeshiva world, and all the little things, like he's standing in davening and he beats his chest, and then the guy coughs, and he's like, "Oh, coughing must be part of davening," and so he coughs, and all that. Then by the end, he finds out that everyone in the yeshiva kind of knew, because it was obvious he was sticking out like a sore thumb. So in the end, he loses the challenge, but he finds something way better. And that's kind of the end of that story. But rewatching it, I realized a couple of things. First of all, as a kid, for some reason, it was presented as like, he just kind of had this idea and he decided to go to yeshiva. It felt very random.
yeah,
As an adult, rewatching it, being like, this guy was clearly motivated, but I don't think that it was as random as the film made it seem. And then the other part was I just loved the little details. Like there was one moment where he's like sitting in a shear, and the rabbi says like, "Blah, blah, blah," and he's like, "But Rabbi, how can it be? On Daf Ches it says the opposite." And he's like, "Oh, wow, it's taka good kasha." And like that moment was like, that's yeshivish core right there. Like, wow, there's no
yeah.
better feeling than asking the Rebbe a good kasha and you stump him. Like, whoa, that's next level. So I definitely enjoyed seeing that represented in very authentic, and yeah, it was an interesting experience taking a look back at
So
it.
so where I'm coming from is exactly what you're saying, and that's what I was trying to say. How sometimes I find myself overthinking it, not in a like, oh my gosh, you're overthinking it, but overthinking meaning you pick up a lot of different nuances. I'll give you an example for the challenge. There's so many examples I could say throughout the entire film for scene to scene, but I'm just gonna jump into what you were saying. That scene with the shear. There's so many dimensions just in that scene, and the way you look at it is that that scene could have been like a very like simple scene, like oh, like he said a question and the rabbi found it very nuanced, and like wow, but when you think about it, there's a lot of different things you could interpretate in that scene. Number one, you after watching the film, you kind of already know that the rabbi knows he's acting. And so when he goes good kasha the second time, you could interpret it saying he's not just saying good kasha like as in like the question itself is good, but you could also say that the rabbi's actually in shock and awe and he's kind of realizing himself that, oh, this is not just a kid that's trying to do a prank and I'm trying to see how long he could go for. This is actually a potentially someone that could do something with his life. And it's like a shock for the rabbi himself saying, oh, wow, this guy is actually smart and could do something. And also as an encouragement of subtly the rabbi saying to him, oh, that was a very good question, as an encouragement to continue doing this legitimately. You know what I mean? Like there's little things you could pick up that whether the writing or the actors of the film actually meant that, but it is something interesting you could pick up in that scene.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point what you're saying right now. Yeah, like it's always interesting to rewatch it and knowing what happens in the end. But what's so funny is that as a kid, I never picked up that nuance that
Yeah.
the nobody in the school really realized. I always thought like for some reason that never registered with me until this most recent rewatch, like a decade later. So it's interesting, yeah. And there's always more at play in the story than like the kids pick up on. And so yeah, it's very interesting to see like what meta, the underlying idea is. And in this case was like, you don't have to be the perfect Haredi, you don't have to be the perfect guy. Just like, by wanting to join, like they were willing to go along with him with his Mishigas and like indulge him in it. Yeah, so it is interesting. Yeah, and also like I was saying before, the opening, like it's strange how, out of the blue, this guy just wants to go to yeshiva. Like clearly there's way more context that we're not given. And as a kid, we're just like, okay, no context, no problem, and just kind of roll with it. But as an adult watching it back, being like, okay, there's this guy's there's more happening here than this guy's letting on. There's more. We're expected to suppose more at the opening of this film than I initially thought we did.
Right. And I think it's sad because when you watch those type of films where you find that the writing is so more in depth and so more complicated in a very positive way. And then when you watch stuff that are just people that just making a film just because, oh, like we're for Chol Hamoed Pesach, I need to come out with a film that could go into the From world that people could watch over for Chol Hamoed or something. And I don't really have to. And I spoke to people that had that mindset. They straight out told me saying, yeah, technically we could have done a script and a story that we could do something more complicated, more nuanced. But because it was easier to just do something simple and we would have made as much as the same money, we just did the simple version. And that kills me because I don't think anyone that goes into the From video making entertainment and is successful and continues to do something, I don't think they're just in it just for the money or just to be in that industry. I actually do think there's something in them that started them out and continues them to motivate them because they actually enjoy the art. But then they get pushed into a corner where they go like, oh, is it simpler to do it this way or this way? I'm just gonna do that way. So I don't think there's nothing they can do, or they're just going in just because of the not necessarily things that I enjoy about it. And that's what kills me because they do have that potential to do it better and more quality and more good and dialogue and everything.
Yeah. You're reminding me of something someone told me recently, kind of like an intense statement, but I think it resonates with what you're saying. It's like the wedding industry ruins like Jewish creativity, something to that effect. And I think it's what you're saying right now, which is like anybody who's interested in videography as an art form, not just simply to make money, generally in the firm world, like what are your options to channel that? Like not much.
Yeah.
Yes, there's kids entertainment, but like how popular is that? And yeah, like either people, for the most part, someone who's really interested in that art form goes into the wedding business. And, I don't know whether his statement is accurate or true or whatever, but it was just really got me to think. And it sounds like you're saying something in a similar vein, which is like, there's two reasons to do this type of thing. It's like to make money or to, I guess both are valid, to make money or make art, but like which one is the
Yeah, but I
primary
feel like you could do
concern?
both. I feel
And
like doing one extreme or one, it shouldn't be in that case. I feel like
sure,
if you're in the art to tell the story, what draws the audience is good quality writing. You could only go so far when you're just doing the simple story.
sure. Yeah, I agree that both are important, but I'm saying which one, like I'm agreeing with you that the writing, the art, the heart of it's got to come first and foremost, while the money is definitely important in order to get these type of things done and in order to sustain this economy of creators, but it's not the reason to do certain things like that. So yeah, I wonder if I can pivot also and ask you. You mentioned before how you have the Panemius podcast where you speak to a lot of people who are behind these Jewish films. I'm very curious, like, how did you get in touch with all these people? I don't know if you can reveal your sources, but just this is how you came on my radar. Was I think your interview with Label Cohen, who's the creator of Agent MS,
Yeah,
and I remember
yeah.
thinking like, wow, like how did you get him? Like I at one point thought about reaching out to him, and I was like, I didn't even know where to start. Like googling his email, like I don't know. So I'm very curious how you
Yeah.
did it and like what your experience has been talking to all these people.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few aspects. So I'm just gonna go with one at a time. So the aspect of how I could reach these people. So there was a point in my life where I was like, I wanted to be a singer. I still wanted to be a singer, and I'm not necessarily being out there. But what is a way where I could use the medium of both making videos and loving music and using it as an outlet until I get into singing, and that's when I started doing music reactions. Then I went on even further, saying, "Hey, I love making videos. What's stopping me from making videos about what I grew up with?" And so I always had that in my mind, but I didn't know how to tackle it necessarily, and I didn't really know if I could have the time because making videos, as you well know, is a lot of work. So I last year I used to get a ride from my house to work. I worked at LEC. It's a school in Miami. I worked there for extracurricular side of the things of school, and so to go to work every day, I would go with this family. They had a DVD player in the car, and they would watch Agent MS, and in the car as one of the videos they would watch, and the driver, the mother, is from Pittsburgh originally. So she would like tell me these things like, oh, these people and these people. And it came out where she's like, I have Label Cohen's, I could get you in touch with Label Cohen. I'm like, that's when I'm like, oh, wait, if I get in touch with him, I could go more than just saying, hi, I really enjoy your content. What if I do something to showcase it on my channel? Wait, what if I do an interview? Wait, what if I do a podcast about all these people? So like my mind was just rattling it at that moment. Then she got me his number, and I got in touch with him. I said, hi, my name is Uziel Naparstek. I have a podcast. I was trying to make me more formal than what I had at the time. And at first he said, I'm really busy right now, so get back to me in a few months. He gave me a time. Whether he meant like, I don't know who this guy is, I'm just going to tell him a few months and maybe he won't get back to me, or if he actually meant that, I don't know. But I took it seriously. Like I put an alarm on my calendar, get in touch with this guy at this date. Like I actually took it seriously because I knew if I don't take it seriously myself, this plan would never work. So then I spoke to a teacher during our break, and he said, oh, if Label Cohen's not the first guy you do, who's the next guy? I just gave out a name like, I don't know, Michal Weigel, who, if you don't know, is one of the biggest actors that Bali Tshuva that became Chabad, and he's acting in all the videos like that we grew up with, like 80% of them, he's always acting in them, good or bad characters. Anyway, so then I said that name, and he said, "Oh, I could get your number." I'm like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I know a guy who knows a guy," and then I'm like, "Sure," and I texted him, and obviously time zones are different, and there was I was up for a Yom Tiv for Brangen at yeshiva, where I slept at the dorm of the yeshiva, so I was up late because there was a Fabrengen, so we were staying up, and then I was about to go to sleep. 3 a.m. I get a ding. I'm like, who is texting me at 3 a.m.? I look, it says Michal Weigel. I dropped my phone. I was so excited, and it was all different things at once. Like, first of all, this guy is texting me back. That is crazy, and then the fact that something is legitimately happening. And then he said, yeah, sure, I have no problem. And long story short, I ended up interviewing him. Then I'm like, who's the next guy? And my brother, who did a project with David Taub, who made Ichikaduzi, got him in touch with him, and I interviewed him. Then it came time to talk to Label Cohen, and I said, hey, catching up. And then Label Cohen's like, you know what, just send me the links of what you have. He saw my podcast. Without looking, he said, oh, you interviewed David Taub. He's my good friend. If you did an interview with him, then I'll definitely do one. He didn't watch. He didn't look over. He said, if my friend David Taub did something with you, then I know you're legit. You're doing something here. I'll join on. And we still get in touch. We still talk about things even after the interview. I still want to do a part 2 with him, like a kind of like episode by episode, instead of just talking behind the scenes in general thing with him. But yeah, long story short, that's how I get in touch with these people is once I get into the producer, like Label Cohen, he gets me all his actors. And then when I got to Michal Weigel, he got me in touch with directors he worked and people he worked. So it's like once you got, because the Jewish entertainment industry is very small. So once you get one person, you have access to more people. So that's how the podcast and getting to know these people kind of started.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's honestly, it's, to me, I'm being pulled in two different directions at the same time, but one of them is like, this is such a niche world, and like, are we putting a microscope to something? Like, yeah, I don't know, should we zoom out more? But on the other hand, I think it's so intensely cool that like you decided to just talk to all these people who made the films we grew up on, and all the actors in it as well. That was so interesting. I remember seeing Clarence, it was, I think, the first actor interview I saw of yours, and I remember thinking, like, who is this guy interviewing Clarence, bro? Like, that really blew my mind.
I think when most people, the feedback that I got, like, for example, Clarence, I'm going to use Clarence as a very extreme example for all the other people, is that, like you said, you see the thumbnail, you see the title that you're interviewing Clarence. You're like, what? And then when you first watch it and get deep into it, you realize, oh, wait, it's more than just like the iconic psychic character that everyone knows in the religious world. He actually has a lot to say about entertainment, about not just behind the scenes, but like the art and everything. I think that's such an untapped part of Jewish entertainment, is not just being interested of what we've grew up with, but actually understanding the arts and what made it such a classic, to the point that we're still talking about Clarence, for example, till today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder if is your goal to kind of start a second generation, so to speak, of Jewish films, like to inspire people to make more Jewish films, like let's say the up and comers, people who are in their teens and 20s now? Like, what is your vision for the future of Orthodox filmography, so far as you have a say in it?
I think it's two things. Like you said, to maybe get people engaged. And I'm not looking to inspire a new generation of filmmakers, but I do want to inspire a interest into the film industry, whether it's someone that has a camera and he sees my content, says, ooh, what if I use my camera for the film industry? Or, hey, I'm a good writer. What if I do something about it? And it's kind of like an outlet where people could, just like me as a fan, talking to people who made this industry as a classic as we know it today. So to anyone else that's watching with me could feel the same way, where, oh, I can hear from these people. And then, yeah, also to eventually have a sort of like following in Jewish entertainment to make Jewish arts in film and story tapes, sure, also, but also in film. And then it's also to kind of shed a light to people who used to make these things or are still doing it, but they're the original people that did it, and kind of showcasing a light for them, because I bet you that, like, for example, Leba Cohen, as much as the feedback and the success of Agent MS became so much real to him, but I don't think in any world does he fully grasp how many people actually grew up and got inspired and watched these things as much as he did get the feedback, because the internet is so big, it reaches every corner that you can't imagine where it reaches. So the goal is to inspire new and old, but I don't think it would be worth it if, let's say, I did inspire a new generation to make videos and they continue kind of following the trope of we're just making entertainment to entertain kids to screens and that's it. Because my goal is that we could do much more and make good quality entertainment. And that is my goal with whatever I'm doing. I'm trying to put a spotlight of the in-depth content, how much depth you could get into the content that we watched into, and how much work is put into it, that if there is a person that wants to get into the Jewish from industry, he could watch what I'm saying and talking with these people and go, there could be an aspect of not just entertain, but also inspire and put more in depth into my characters. Instead of just saying, hey, let's have my good guy have a gun against the bad guy, say, no, what's the motivation of my good guy to this point, and what is the motivation of the bad guy to this point? You know what I mean? Because all this, sure, if I inspire people to make entertainment, that's great, but what is entertainment if it's not good quality?
Yeah, let me ask you something. Did you, when you were growing up, did you also grow up with the story tapes? Like, did you hear Rebbe Hill and Fischl Schechter and things of that nature?
Yeah,
Marvelous
yeah,
Widows Machine? Like,
yep,
did you grow up with that as well?
yeah, 100%, yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, and so you mentioned you're in North Carolina, I assume, right? Or
South, but
I
yeah.
assume that was on Shlichus, right? And your parents were sent there. Is that Raleigh Durham, or is that a different city?
Yeah, no, Rabbi Duran is the same Chabad house as my father, yeah.
So, okay, cool, cool. And so you guys got the Schmorg out there as well, I guess. They sent it all the way
Yeah,
out there.
yep. And I think
Okay, very
the way
cool.
we're talking about the religious aspect of the films, in where there's both the medium of entertainment and good quality, in-depth writing, it also applies to story tapes as well.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm looking through my list of different things. There, I have a list that you saw of all the different ideas at the top of my head. I try to, in
Yeah,
this
yeah,
world
yeah.
of Orthodox entertainment, trying to. The one thing we didn't really touch on this list is Mito's production, which I'm pretty sure you spoke to that guy as well, right? Is
I
that
didn't.
C.J. Kramer, who made all these different films, famously McGillis Lester, but also all this other stuff, Yankel Amaretz, and I think that he was a part of that too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So
Yes,
C.J.
tell us more about
Kramer,
that world, because I feel like we talked about Agent MS and the Schmort.
C.J. Kramer only made McGill's Lester and the Pesach Chrome videos, obviously also. But Mito's Productions is not C.J. Kramer; it's someone else. I do forget what his name is, but he doesn't make videos anymore. But I would love to talk with him and to get more in depth with him, because I feel like his film kind of falls into the category of films where there's more good quality writing, more than necessarily the production side of it. But he does touch a lot of things that are way, basically when he made these films, it was way ahead of the time. It was way ahead of the right time where these films could actually could have had like such a good audience, because there are so good written films with such a simple premise, right? Because that's a very hard thing to do, take a simple premise and really touch upon how deep you could go with the writing and acting.
Fantastic. I think as we kind of round the corner on our conversation a little bit, we spent some time talking about nostalgia, about the community, the future. Part of it also, and I'll give a shout out to one of my friends, Zach Greenberger, who, is like me, also grew up in the yeshivish world. Now is kind of, I'd say living between two worlds, kind of still very much interested in the culture of Orthodoxy, but at the same time, wanting to live more integrated life. I guess I'm speaking for myself, and my friend as well fits in a similar category, and we realized like not from so much an inside perspective, from the as an outsider in let's say Hollywood or even independent films, the way that Orthodox people are depicted are the bad writing goes the other way, not where like he's so interested in Torah mitzvahs, but that it doesn't even matter. He doesn't even have any emotions. He's just kind of foil to this character. So yeah, part of that. So part of the solution some people have is to like be very vocal and critical of movies that do that. And I think it's important, but that's not something that resonates with me. For me, it's more of telling more real stories that show not just like all the bright moments or trying to teach a lesson, but are just more verite, like more fly on the wall, more just showing us what life looks like. And we as the audience get to draw a conclusion. We're not necessarily like spoon fed something. And I think that's also a really powerful thing about the art form of film, of cinema, is that it gets to take, mundane moments and kind of elevate them, where we get to see it through this artistic lens, and we're like, wow, like there's so much pain and happiness and love and sadness and just all of it mixed together into these moments. And for a movie to really capture that is powerful. So yeah, just the same way that you kind of want to inspire, or I don't know what the right term is, but trying to set a vibe in a certain direction. I want to complement that with this vision also, which is not just for the insiders, but also making good art that accurately represents Orthodox people to outsiders as well. Recently, for example, there was a documentary about Shaitels came out a few weeks ago, which was aimed at people who are not Orthodox. And again, it's a hard balance to hit, but it's just that's kind of where my mind is at as we as we finish up this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's so important also that it's in two things what you're saying. It's both the message of the film and it's both on how you make the film. So I'll explain what I mean. The aspect of the message of the film, like you said, should be that you put out a story, you put out what you're trying to show in the story, but you should never dictate to the audience what they should think about the story, right? Because you as a storyteller should be telling the story, not telling the audience. That's just a good quote. Tell the story, not tell the audience. But then there's also the aspect of the writing and dialogue. So as opposed to writing what this person is saying, like tell the audience, tell the audience as an actor, I am angry. You could show that by acting it out, showing your anger. That's a very simple way of what I'm trying to point out, but what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of very subtle ways you could tell a story that you don't have to treat the audience dumb on trying to understand the story, but also understand the performance and the writing. You could, and there's a clear proof that me and you are just two people. How much more people in the Frum Jewish audience actually pick up these things? I would love to see more of these things shown in the art form.
Yeah, and I feel like also a lot of times the films kind of start with a premise that they want to get to. Like the character doesn't even have the ability to choose; they're just on a train track, and they can't diverge if they wanted to. So yeah, like you're saying, it's important to build in complexity and nuance into the characters. Yeah, I'd love to see more of it. I'd love to challenge this notion that like film is somehow tainted by the koyach hatoma and the internet is bad. Everything has its challenges and its positive, its negatives. Like Chabad is very big on like gathering the spark, and everything can be made holy. So I think Chabad has always been kind of ahead of the curve on this front. And for the more yeshivish / Haimish world, Hasidish world as well, like they're, I guess, a little slower to catch up on it. But yeah, I love this little cluster of films which basically challenge that narrative that like, no, the films could be used in order to for Orthodox people, by Orthodox people, to show real Orthodox stories. One film I'll give as an example of this that was something I've seen multiple times. not as a kid, as an adult. And I recently had a chance to rewatch it. Is a film called Ushpizin. Have you heard of
Yeah,
it or seen it?
yeah, yeah.
I've
So
heard of
good.
it. Yeah, Ushpizin is such a great example of what we're talking about. Yeah, go ahead.
No, but yeah, but also like you said, Ushpizin is not necessarily the actor or the character in the story saying, "I am from, you're not from, and that is bad." No, they showcase how this guy in this story became from, and when he's in his lowest of his normal life, in comes in a challenge and a showcase of what he was from his past on top of all what he's dealing with. And it never told you that the main character never sat on the screen or told the characters, I'm terrible, I'm losing it, this is gonna happen. No, the Shuli Ran, the actor, performed it, and the writing subtly showed it, and he was bouncing off the other actors that performed those messages too, right? It gave audience the benefit of the doubt that you could join along and understand every aspect of the film, both in what is showed on screen, but also the silver lining of everything about it.
Yeah, that was interesting because I don't know if it was made for from people, but by virtue of it having Shuli Rand as the head, as the main character, which is interesting because, like we discussed, had Chabad messaging or just Orthodox messaging. But yeah, what was really beautiful about it is like it ends with a good moral and a good feeling, but like it's very real. It doesn't sugarcoat it too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another example of this I'll give is a show from Israel called Shababnikim, which also really captures an authentic version of it. Although I have to say that like it does sometimes veer off into comedy land where it like becomes a little hard to tell like what's really reality and what's being exaggerated for the show. But overall, it does a really good job of portraying like what is the experience of being in a yeshiva and wanting to explore the world and to forge like a your own identity, not just to be one among many, but at the same time, wanting to stay within the firm world and like navigating those two poles. Like we start out with tradition and modernity, but set within a firm world, not within the shtetl from 200 years ago, like Fiddler on the Roof, but actually something that is real and relevant. And yeah, so it was just a fantastic show. I've seen it twice actually, and I'm probably gonna watch it more. Hope to do a review on it. And yeah, it definitely it's these type of films. They challenge us as the viewer. Like they're not necessarily here to just say, this is what I believe. The end. It's very much like, I don't agree with that, or like he's crazy, or he's, this is good, this is bad. Like it forces us to kind of think like, what is our opinion on this matter? But I think that's what makes it so good. It's like it's not passive. Um, it's not just like, okay, the message is built in from the first second, so I just kind of like absorb it. It creates such an internal dialogue where it causes a conversation between people that I think is really like ultimately what makes it so good. And so yeah, I'd love to see more of that, and I hope that both from your end of it, like for people inside the firm world, get to see more of it, as well as people who are not in the firm world get to see more of it as well. So yeah, this conversation is honestly quite inspiring. So I'm happy
And
we had
also,
it.
like, it's not just showcasing a story that you start from scratch, like, for example, Ushpizin or something like that. You could easily do that with stories that we did grow up with. Like, for example, my one of my favorite Grovice films of that he did was the Unexpected or the Dancing Bear, like all which you saw also. He took a simple story that we grew up with. It. Oh, the pirates put that man in the dungeon, and he made a party, and the Shpalazade came in and saved him. Right? That's a simple story, but he wrote it and portrayed it with a lot more than just the simple tale that we know. You know what I mean? Like you go on the journey with the person until he gets into the dungeon. So you can feel sympathy with the character, not because he's Jewish, not because he's a good guy, but because you feel for the character himself. And you didn't think like the Paris was another Paris, like, oh, he's evil. The film actually put more depth into saying, why should I hate this Paris other than he's just a Paris? right? You're hating it because of his character, who so happened to be a pirate. You know what I mean? Like, you could do those things also with stories that already happened, stories that we grew up with that we could say is simple, and expand on it, that you could make it more that the audience could actually engage and think about more. Let's close off the hour that we have, and I'll start with you. What's your final thought, and we'll close it.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but to me, I found this conversation very interesting and inspiring, both from an insider and an outsider's perspective. I feel like both just talking to the people who made all these films, hearing your perspective on that, thinking about the future, both for people in the Frum community and people not in the Frum community, how Orthodox Jews are represented. Yeah, it fills me with excitement. I'm excited to see what other people make. I'm excited to help contribute in any way I can. So yeah, I'm leaving off with a feeling of excitement about the future of this medium.
Yeah, and to close off, I love this conversation, like what you said, and I'll add to it that if anyone has a sort of specific topic or a question on, or a certain aspect that we could focus on for the next episode, or for the more or other episodes that hopefully we could do in the future, please comment below. And also, we want to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on Jewish entertainment, both from whatever aspect you're coming from, but also the aspect of what you've seen and what you want to see, and all of that. So thank you so much, David. I hope to do another segment with you in the future. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, and also for those who are going to watch this episode. David, why don't you close off with plugging in what you have in store and where people can find you?
Sure. So you can check me out at @_yiddishkeit. I'm sure it'll be linked below. Right now, focusing on stories from Jewish American history and blending in film into those stories. So I have recently a tour about the Jewish Lower East Side, which you can check out. I recently did a conversation with a historian in honor of July 4th. So more things in that vein coming very soon.
All right, and for those who want to check me out, if those who are coming in that are new to this channel or to me, you could check out this channel where I talk to interviews, and I also dump breakdowns with other people from other YouTube channels. You could look forward to this Mitzvah Shabbos, another previous podcast episode with a guy. Now I'm disclosing it for the public. His name is Dov Bernadich. You might know him from Space Rabbi. He's an actor, a minor. He did cameos in Agent MS. And he has written for Netflix also, like a Frum Chabad guy that has written for Netflix and for other productions. And it was a great conversation from all mediums and spectrums of both Frum and not Frum entertainment, and what he has went through. And I can't wait to put that out and for everyone to watch. So hope to see you guys next time. Thank you, David, for joining.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.